hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your patience as we sorted out outside of Africa. We got a moment. We are here. My name is Jonah. I'm from Spotlight, and today we are talking about how you doing?
Hi, Jonah. I'm having a little bit of a tough time hearing you.
No worries. No worries.
Much better.
There it is. No worries. No worries.
Better.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for helping us set all this up.
Yeah, super excited to have you. I'm going to get a few expectations out of the way for everyone before we dive in. If you
Perfect.
have any questions, it seems like you're all very comfortable with the Q&A, but hop in there. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know you can hear and see us, something you're excited to learn, maybe how you heard about Melanie or Spotlight. We love hearing all of those. And if you're watching the replay today, please hop in the comments, do the same. We do go back and read those and love hearing from you. And I know Melanie has a lot to walk us through today. So if things are moving fast or you have to get up away from the computer, anything like that, don't fret. All of this will be in a replay. It'll be on our YouTube channel, the Spotlight YouTube channel, on the Spotlight event page, and emailed to you along with the course offer, which we'll talk about a little later. And just to make sure that everyone is in the right place, like I said, we are talking to Melanie, and we are talking about mental and emotional regulation, one of the 7 pillars of self-discipline. And the 7 pillars scratch the surface of the mental, emotional, and behavioral changes required to take control of all areas of your life, break old habits that sabotage your life and business, and establish new, healthy, and effective habits to self-discipline. Melanie, I'm super excited to dive in, and I don't want to take up any more time. So why don't we hand it over to you and we can get started?
Awesome. Well, Jonah, you kind of summed up the whole training right there. So thank you.
Yeah,
We've all gotten what you paid for, basically.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for taking an hour out of your day today. I am really excited to kind of talk to you about Pillar 1, which is the mental and emotional regulation skills required to take control of every area of your life and live a life of personal pride and fulfillment. I'm really passionate about this topic, and we'll dive into it now. So again, today we talk about Pillar 1, which is the foundation to all of the rest of the pillars. Without the skills to develop our ability to regulate our thoughts and emotions in the moment, the rest of it doesn't really matter. So this is a really important pillar that I'm super excited to dive into today. And just going forward a little bit, I want to just chat about the rest of the 6 pillars, just to give you a sense of kind of what to expect in this entire program. Over the course of the 7 weeks, we're really going to dive into the behavioral changes, working on breaking old habits, learning about how to manage our time, eliminate procrastination, really focus on our priorities, and of course, establish some really deep-rooted goals that we can identify with and live a life through perseverance and passion. So really excited. Before we jump in, I just want to explain that, self-discipline is like a set of magic keys that unlocks wealth, abundance, happiness, satisfaction, and personal pride. It's really the bridge between imagination and accomplishment. The question I really want you to ask yourself today as we explore Pillar 1 is, what do I need to do? And what will it take? Who do I need to become to live a life of my desires and to accomplish everything I set out to accomplish in life? We're going to learn collectively, and I really hope it's interactive, and don't hesitate to write in the chat and ask any questions or clarification. All right, so here we go. So before we jump in, I kind of want to just give you a little bit of background as to who I am and why I'm so passionate about the topic of self-discipline. So at a very young age, I developed the skills to be able to really accomplish and set out to achieve the things in life that I was passionate about. My parents got me into gymnastics around the age of 7. By the age of 10, I was training 4, 5, 6 days a week, a couple hours a day, and really had to sacrifice a whole lot in pursuit of my goals. Now, in school, I struggled a lot. I was actually diagnosed with dyslexia, so I struggled and really had to overcome a lot of challenges. So gymnastics was a great outlet for me to really throw myself into and get really single-mindedly focused on that goal. By the age of 12, I convinced my mom to let me move away to Pennsylvania, where I could pursue my goal of being an Olympic gymnast. With that came a lot of homesickness. The intensity of my trainings and routine required a tremendous deal of self-discipline, focus, and sacrifice. Now, moving forward, a really passionate part of the mental and emotional regulation skills that I'd like to touch on actually was inspired by a competition when I was a junior in high school at nationals, where my mind just froze and I succumbed to the pressure of the competition. And from that day on, I was committed to figuring out why that happened to my mind, why I could do all of the right things in terms of the actions and the discipline, but my mind and those mental skills were not developed enough to be able to support my dreams. So fast forward, I decided to get in my degree in clinical psychology and social work. And I decided to then change my career to real estate. Now, going forward in that first year, because of that ability to get really focused and disciplined, I was able to sell the amount of houses I wanted to sell and really achieve that goal right out of the gate. So I share this because I failed more times than I succeeded, and things did not come easily to me, but I never gave up and I never gave in. So self-discipline really gave me the personal pride and confidence to be able to set and achieve goals in the pursuit of what I wanted. So moving forward. All right, so what to expect today. Let's see here. So I'm sure you guys have all set a New Year's resolution, and more specifically, maybe a health goal around those New Year's resolutions. So I'm sure you can probably relate to that feeling of setting that goal, buying those new shoes, getting the new workout outfit, and feeling really, really motivated. But then something happens after 1 or 2 weeks where you start sleeping through your alarm. You start kind of making excuses and letting life kind of take over. What is that? Well, that is exactly where self-discipline is key. It's about getting it done when it needs to get done, not because we feel like it. It's about having a strong will and a deep commitment to follow through on the goals that we've set for ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to learn how to control our thoughts and emotions in the moment when it really counts. So what to expect today, we're going to get really clear about the desires and key areas of your life that you want to commit to more self-discipline. We're going to learn a little bit of the science behind our emotions and how we're wired. And then we're going to learn practical, in the moment self-regulation strategies to keep you on track to your goals. So the benefits, the goal of today is to really learn the basic mental techniques that will keep us on track to follow through on our personal commitments, despite how we feel in the moment. Self-discipline is truly the single most important attribute to becoming successful, reaching your fullest potential, and again, living a life of personal pride and fulfillment. And in order to do that, we have to develop the skills of self-discipline. And then we'll end with a little homework. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, and Jonah will let me know if anyone has anything to share or clarification. All right, so we're moving forward. Self-discipline is about leaning into resistance, taking action in spite of how we feel, living a life by design, not by default. But most importantly, it's acting in accordance with your thoughts and not your feelings. In other words, self-discipline really requires us to embrace what's uncomfortable in the moment in pursuit of our goals tomorrow. It's about kind of keeping our emotions between the guardrails of our life. You know, there's really no way around hard work and consistency and effort to achieve the things that we want, whether it's personal goals, financial goals, relationship goals. And to live the life that we truly desire requires focus, passion, and perseverance. All right, so moving on, we're going to do a little exercise. So we're going to get really clear about the areas of our life that we desire to get a little bit more disciplined in. Today, we're going to put your desires into action in order to reach that quintessential good life. We must have a plan and a direction to know where we're going. And the beautiful thing about it is you can start today. You can start over and you can take control of some of these areas of your life that you might have let slip. So I'm going to read a question to you, and I'm going to ask you to just pause where you're at and kind of close your eyes, unplug, and just try to get really present and just listen to the question I'm going to ask you. I want you to imagine going about your life as normal and heading off to sleep. Unknown to you, during the night, something happens, a miracle. When you wake up the following day, you are a person of extreme self-discipline and commitment to your goals. All of your choices, decisions, and behaviors align with the life you desire, no matter what it takes. How will you know that miracle has happened? So I want you to take a moment. You can write it down. I invite you to write down whatever came up for you, because that is the deep desire of your heart. And that's what I want you to focus on today. Here lies the problem. Sometimes the thing that is holding you back is all in your head. Now, as you see here, this horse is tied to a very light chair. Clearly, it can break away. But the problem is that it has been conditioned to believe that it can't. This horse has learned that it's who he is. And sadly, we're all conditioned in our life to not see our true capabilities. So I want you to think about yourself. Is there a belief that you may have adopted at a young age that you have accepted as truth about yourself and your capabilities? For me, I've always, because of my early age in school and those struggles that I had, I kind of adopted this belief that I wasn't naturally smart enough. And that's limited me. And that's been a constant thing that I've had to be aware of and kind of combat throughout my life. And I think that we all have something deep down that we may have adopted and accepted as a belief about ourselves. So if you have a scrap piece of paper next to you, I want you to write down a core belief that you may have accepted as truth when you were a child. I want you to write that down on a piece of paper. And then I want you to tear it up, because you can choose today to let that go. When we betray our personal potential, we're actually disrespecting ourselves, which then creates a reservoir of low self-esteem. It's why people quit. It's why people walk away. And it's why people resign to mediocrity. I want you to really consider, what could you become without that limiting belief? Okay, nice job. I'm working two screens here. Thank you guys for waiting. Before we keep going on, we're going to take a little detour to a fantasy island called Someday Isle. Here, you're going to find people with lots of reasons and no results. You're going to hear people say things like, someday I'll start that exercise program. Someday I will start that training. Someday I will upgrade my skills to get that promotion. We're all kind of just like corks bobbing through the ocean, reacting to life's distractions, demands, and diversions. Failure occurs by not just one event, but a bunch of small events over a period of time. Now, I know a lot of people on here might be real estate agents, and so I'll pull from an example. When we're lead generating, and we're supposed to write those 10 letters a day, and we only write 5, or we're supposed to make those 20 calls a day, and we only make 10. It's not a big problem that day, but what happens over 1 day, 2 days, 3 weeks, 1 year? We're behind. and it could be devastating for our business and our life. So over the next hour and 7 weeks, if you decide to sign up for this full training, I want you to vote yourself off of someday I'll by committing to taking action in one area of your life and building momentum so that you're not making excuses, you're not putting those things off, you're not waiting for the perfect time to go after the things that you really want. We're going to do a little exercise. If you're listening in, just go there with your mind. But if you're able to grab a piece of paper, this is going to be a really cool, effective exercise to really identify where some of our self-limiting thoughts come from. So I want you to pick an area of your life, whether that's career, finances, relationships, spirituality, fitness. And I want you to consider what your life would look like if you had no limitations, no self-limiting beliefs, no restrictions, no barriers. Now, I want you to consider these questions as just examples. So if you pick career, what position would you like to have? How much money would you like to make? Who would you like to work with? If you have a health goal and you've been putting that off, how would you describe your perfect health? How would you feel when you woke up in the morning? What would you look like? I'll give you a few seconds to kind of wrap that up and work on this after today. It's really good to really take some time and think about these things. The big question is, what do you need to start doing? What do you need to stop doing? And what do you need to keep doing? So we're going to move on to the science behind our emotions. Now, as a cognitive behavioral therapist, I'm kind of a geek around neuroscience and human behavior. Our mind and body are so deeply connected. So it's helpful to kind of understand how our wiring impacts how we behave and react to the world around us. It's important to note that our brains have evolved over centuries as a result of changing conditions, giving us the ability to not just only survive, but to work together, communicate, and set and achieve goals. So in order to control our impulses, we must kind of follow through on the tasks and take a quick look at the evolution of our brain. Our brain is wired to find problems and look for trouble. Over 60,000 thoughts a day, about 80% of those are negative just because of our own wiring. So we'll start with the brainstem here at the bottom of the brain. This is our instinctual mind. This is the most ancient part of our brain that regulates our nervous system, our heartbeat. This part of our brain is wired to look for problems, to keep us safe. It's our subconscious response patterns to triggers in our environment. So for example, my husband and I were hiking last year and a bear was literally barreling down the mountain at us, and his instinctual response pattern is to fight. So he turned to the bear and stared at the bear with his fists up. I was already halfway down the mountain screaming, "Every man for himself." We all respond differently to those situations. So it's really kind of important. I share this because we're all wired differently. And in order to understand that, we'll be able to better understand how we react to the situations around us. The second most developed part of our brain is the limbic system. This is our emotional intelligence center. This is where we experience a wide range of emotions, all of the human emotions such as anger, sadness, fear, grief, disgust. This is also where our core beliefs are embedded. We adopt core beliefs before the age of 7, and it carries with us through the rest of our lives. Every time we avoid a situation, So this is also where we avoid situations. It triggers to our brainstem that we're in fear. Even the subtle things that we avoid in life, whether it's something to do with our business or avoiding a difficult conversation, we're reinforcing that habit and sending signals to our brain that we're actually in fear mode. So we actually continue to avoid that same situation. And the last most developed part of our brain is the prefrontal cortex. And this is where we can set and achieve goals. This is where we can really think forwardly, think in the future. It's the part of our brain that creates belief systems. Now, when I was competing as a gymnast, like I said, at nationals, I completely shut down and kind of analyzed, paralyzed, and wasn't able to perform my routine. That's because I had such intense emotions of pressure that the front part of my brain, my prefrontal cortex, actually shut down. So what's important to note here is that when our emotions go up, our intellect goes down. And we're going to talk a little bit in a little bit about how to kind of regulate those emotions. So we're continuing to be able to think logically in the moment and be decisive in our decisions. All right, moving on. Okay. Now that you've let me kind of nerd out a little bit over the brain, here's a little simpler way to understand how our mind works. Essentially here, what's important to understand is that all of our emotions have a purpose. And they all have a reason. So this movie here, if anyone's seen it, it's called Inside Out. It's my favorite. It's a great way to kind of understand our basic emotions and our core beliefs and how they actually influence the way that we see the world around us. So I'll give you some homework. You can watch that this week. We're going to talk a little bit about how our thoughts impact our emotions. So here's a list of some common thinking traps. Because our thoughts are heavily influenced by our subconscious core beliefs that we have developed as children, they're not often based in reality, but past experiences, past failures, and past disappointments. These turn into what we call as thinking traps. Now, a couple here are pretty common, and I think we might all be able to relate to how they may have showed up in our life before. The first one here is called fortune telling or assumptions. It's about when we predict the future outcome or anticipate that things will turn out badly. Now, for an example, if we've had a bad conversation with somebody or we've had a tough appointment, we might then predict or assume that every appointment that way is going to turn out with the same outcome. We can see how that can become pretty detrimental long term. The other common thinking trap is called overgeneralization, seeing a single negative event as a never-ending pattern. Now, I do this sometimes when I have had a difficult conversation with my spouse even, and I just assume that anytime that one topic is going to be brought up, it's always going to be a tough conversation. The next is minimizing or magnifying. It's really exaggerating or shrinking the importance of a situation. So here I use the example of minimizing the safety of wearing a seatbelt. We might do this a lot as a way of coping with our surroundings. And then the last is toxic positivity. Unable to acknowledge uncomfortable emotions. When we might experience, shame or guilt or fear, we might feel bad about that or judge ourselves for that. Perfect example, and I love my mom. She would fall into this category. She's always positive to the detriment, I think, sometimes. And a good example was, at 16, driving down the road, running out of gas. I was about an hour away from my home and called her with no money and told her, and she said, just think positively. And I said, Mom, thinking positively is not going to put the gas from the gas tank into my car. So that's kind of the scenario when you're experiencing toxic positivity or unable to really look at the whole wide range of human emotions. All right. So we're moving on to a little exercise again on how our thoughts impact our emotions and our outcomes. So by identifying and replacing them, we're going to be more helpful. We're going to have more helpful thoughts that are in alignment with the outcome that we desire. So for example, I want you to think of an event that had a dramatic impact on your emotional state. Oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. So I want you to write an event that has happened recently that triggered an emotional reaction, a negative emotional reaction. So for example, up here, I've used falling short on an exercise goal. Now on the left side under the T, I want you to write what thought was triggered after falling short on that exercise goal. So for example, the thought that comes to mind is, this always happens to me. That's why I never have been able to stick to a diet. And then I want you to write an emotion that you experienced because of that thought. So for example, frustration, anger at yourself for not being able to follow through, discouragement, and then even sometimes relief for not actually having to change that behavior. And then what action did you take or not take as a result of the emotion you felt? And quit the diet. So the goal here is to move from I need to feel like doing it to I'm going to do it so I feel like doing it. So on the right side, I want you to choose a thought replacement that's going to create the emotion that you need to drive to your goal. So for example, we're going to start with A. The action that we want to happen is sticking to your exercise goal. So it's one step at a time, getting a coach, maybe writing down your goals and eliminating any distractions. And what emotion do you need to feel to trigger a thought that's going to be helpful and in alignment with your desired outcome? So for here, the emotion of feeling confident, excited, and eager to tackle this goal. And then the thought of, I am capable, I just have to start small and have fun. So the key thing here is that the emotion, the thought up here in the top right corner, those should become your affirmations. You're starting to program your mind for the results that you want to see. All right. Jonah, are there any questions popping up yet?
People are following along. No questions yet, but a lot of just affirmations. People following along, enjoying it.
Awesome.
I'm having realizations. Yeah.
Oh, well, not to put you
profound.
Not to put you on the spot, but feel free to share. I mean, I think this is collectively, we're all learning from each other. So
yeah, it's been awesome. I notice, I mean, I think relationships are especially the place where you get reflected with the mirror of these things, but it's definitely been a theme in my life this year to be tracking if my emotions are related to the moment or because of something that happened in the past. And like you say, that trained, I don't know if I forget the exact language you use, but that trained response to a specific situation.
yeah.
And that can just start dictating every time you encounter even something slightly like that situation, even if it's a totally different person, a totally different scenario.
And I love that, Jonah, because I think we can all relate to that. And your example is so tangible. I think a lot of people maybe listening now is, how does this all relate to self-discipline? And really self-discipline starts in the mind. It's a mental habit that we have to start creating for ourselves through practice and through awareness and observation of our own thoughts and our own emotions and how we respond to stimulation around us. we're faced with constant distractions that are throwing us off course or trying to pull us off course, and always, easily making excuses for things that don't typically seem super important. Best example I can use is, for me, it's physical fitness.
Mhm.
That is the foundation of my day, because I know that if I'm not doing that basic thing, the rest of my day is thrown off. But 9 times out of 10, I don't jump out of bed excited and
Right.
eager
Right.
to put my running shoes on,
Right.
but it's thinking ahead of, how am I going to feel if I don't do that?
It's so hard to yes, but I feel yeah. And I shouldn't say but, because I'm not disagreeing, but it is a challenge in life to build up that expectation of the feeling afterwards. And it's so easy to take the I love that you had relief in there in the process of failing to do something, because there is a huge relief to being like, maybe I feel bad about it, but I don't have to do it.
Yes, and tying it back to that avoidance tendency that we have, every time we avoid, we actually send a message to our brain that that activity was unsafe, and thus we should keep avoiding that. So we're sending the subconscious message to our brain that we should be avoiding that situation, and then it creates a habit.
Right. Right.
So a big piece of self-discipline is about leaning in to what's uncomfortable when we want to lean out.
Yeah. So, we actually do have a question coming in from, Twin Flames here, but I think it's really interesting and a little more geared at dealing with other people, but is asking, what if you feel your emotion and you feel a correct response, but decide to be contraire anyways?
Mhm.
And then a follow-up, I get a little tired of people thinking it is okay to be disruptive while calling it speaking the truth, but essentially terrorizing everyone. So how do you deal with these situations? So whether it's in yourself or in others, the desire to kind of contradict in itself as like a mechanism within
Yeah.
your emotions.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. Thank you, Twin Flame, for reaching out. For me personally, I think it's about practice, and it's about kind of that trial and error, because eventually you're going to get to a point where you're sick of not doing the things that you want to do. It's almost like that choose your hard. It's going to be hard to get yourself to do the things that you want to do, but it's going to be just as hard when you don't.
Right. Right. And so that contrarian attitude is ultimately not constructive. Right.
Correct. And I would challenge you to spend some time on that. What part of you is ambivalent to change? And that's actually pillar 2, is addressing our ambivalence to change. There is a part
Yeah.
of us that wants to progress and be successful and move in the right direction. And then there's a part of us that's holding us back, and we're stuck in this ambivalence.
Yeah.
So it's really important to
Yeah.
actually look non-judgmentally, but out of curiosity, all of the parts of us, the part
Yeah.
that wants to move forward and the part that's holding us back for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I something that comes to mind as well with that is when the word self-discipline could actually trigger some intense negative emotion linked to sacrifice.
Right.
Self-discipline and
Right.
sacrifice could go hand in hand, and they're kind of conflicting feelings and in terms. But when we're self-disciplined, we do have to sacrifice a few things. But what do you want more?
Right. Well, and what I'm hearing too from you though is like it's not being disciplined at all costs. It's building the confidence that comes with the ability to be disciplined, which then allows you to choose where to put that energy, right?
That's perfectly said.
Okay.
Perfectly said. Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, we are looking for a holistic, fulfilling life, not burnout, not
Right.
one thing that we throw ourselves into. We're at the end of the day, we all are searching for fulfillment. And that means that every area of our life has to be honored.
Right.
So it's self-discipline in a way that's healthy and that works for us. And that looks different for everybody.
Right.
And only we know what that feels like for us. And
Right.
we also know when we're not honoring our own commitments. And that's where the negative emotion comes from.
Right. So we're not talking about being the hardest, most brutal takedown person in the room.
No. And I've
It's
been
about
there.
the
I've been that person.
Right. Right. Well, and Twin Flames brought up some stuff for me. I was starting to think, I was like, do I know anyone who's a regular contrarian who like has that confidence of discipline, and not off the bat, because they're not building the validation that comes with actually being disciplined.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really about going, marching to the beat of your own drum and knowing yourself well enough to know when you're betraying your own self, your own self potential, when you're betraying those commitments to
Right.
yourself. No one else is going to know that but you.
Right.
This is a very personal journey for everyone.
Yeah. Heron had a beautiful comment. He just popped in. Habits must be raised like children and watered like trees. This is my point of view.
That's beautiful.
That's great, except for I didn't want kids, Heron. Now I got now
Yeah.
I got them no matter what. No,
I
I love
love
it.
that. Yeah. I mean, handled with kid gloves, nurtured, supported, are putting our best foot forward and doing it from a place of like genuine love and curiosity. Life is tough, and we juggle a lot.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get into. I know we're about to talk about self-regulation, but I just want to reiterate, when we're talking about regulation, we're not talking about suppression, right? We're not talking about shutting emotions down. It's perspective.
It's actually the exact opposite of shutting emotions down. Yep.
Okay.
And I love that you brought that
Yeah.
up. And we'll go into that a little bit, but please keep asking these questions, because this is the meat. This is the good stuff here that people really can connect with. So don't hold back.
I won't. You just put me. I was sitting in my chair reflecting a little bit. It's been a crazy 2 years, so it's fun to
Good.
dive in. But yeah,
Yeah, I
I'll
love this.
we can keep going, and then I'll pop back in, and everyone keep chiming in. We don't just need questions. Your insights, your reflections,
Please.
all of it are great here. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a collective process here, and we're all, sharing experiences, what worked, what hasn't worked. And this is what I know to be true for me and from some of my studies in life, but I think other people can certainly add value to their own experiences and what's worked. So, all right. So we're going to get into a little bit of the meat of some of the practical skills that you can actually take with you today. And the point of this is that it doesn't just happen with the snap of a finger. You actually have to be mindful and really put these things into practice on a daily basis. So moving on, the first one is called the channel changing technique. So essentially, it's really like envisioning the static on a television, just kind of allowing your thoughts to just melt away. It's almost very meditative, but this is a very quick trick to interrupt that in the moment thought train from derailing you from what you want to do and get done. So it's a great technique to kind of remove the distractions of the moment by thinking about something different. We're all really good about, thinking ourselves out of doing what we need to do. So for example, this technique has always been helpful for me when I wake up in the morning and I need to go to the gym or whatever, and I'm being pulled to stay in my warm, comfy bed. I made the decision I need to get up, and I don't want to kind of think myself out of it. So I go to a place of just completely blanking my mind out and envisioning the static on a television. What that does is decrease the emotion. So we're not controlled by that emotion. So it's literally just completely turning the dial on that television or changing that thought in the moment, kind of helps us stay on track and do what we need to get done in that moment. And this is also a great technique when we start to feel like we're overthinking something or worried about something that we have coming down the pike, whether it's a presentation or a training or an appointment that you're about to go on. This is a great in the moment technique. The next one is inhibit acting on your impulse. Now, this is really challenging. And I think at some point we all kind of struggle with dealing with those impulsive temptations, or reacting to something in that moment. But self-discipline is really about foregoing the short-term satisfaction for long-term gratification and gain. So the question to ask yourself here is, who's driving your bus? Is it you, or is it your emotion? So this can also have a devastating impact on us if we give into our impulses all the time. It can come down to over drinking or eating or any of those other addictions that so many of us kind of struggle with. But every time we act or react and follow through on an impulse, we're reinforcing that behavior. And that eventually does turn into habits.
So, Melanie, I have to ask, because I've run into this with a few people in my life before, where they're convinced that impulse equals passion.
Interesting. I've never heard that before.
I think I just work with a lot of musicians, and
Oh, I
from
understand, like
the
insight or
art world.
intuition.
Yes, intuition,
Yeah,
or if you're feeling something in the moment, that's passion, and it
yeah,
should be preserved, and
yeah.
maybe on the stage, but it is very difficult to separate. I'm curious your thoughts on that, because in my experience with those people, it can be very quick to for them to feel like they're being, like their emotions are being suppressed or shut down, even if you're just asking, like, can you try saying that a little quieter or more respectful?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a difference between kind of being in the flow and a kind of being on that stream where you're like receiving, you're downloading this intuition and you're kind of just going with it. That's power. That's beautiful. This particularly is really about those temptations to derail us and to get us off
Mm,
track. It's about it. We're a society of addiction, unfortunately. And why? It's because we give into those impulses,
right,
and so it's
right.
the impulse to overconsume or the impulse to avoid.
Mm,
It's that split decision, that split second decision, that we have a chance to have two different outcomes. And so it kind of goes back to getting really clear about the desired outcome that we want, that behavior that we want to follow through on, and then being aware enough to know when we have that drunk monkey on our shoulder trying to pull us off track, not giving in to that impulse to avoid or that impulse to overconsume.
right.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it does, and it helps to clarify. And I'm just always curious. Man, I thought I was gonna have an easy day today, but I'm gonna have to think.
That means I'm doing
We're
my
diving
job.
in. We're diving in. I love it. I'll let you keep going, but thank you.
Yeah, well, hey, you said holding up the mirror. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
this is all about.
Yep.
And these are not simple things. This requires a lot of effort, a lot of intentionality, a lot of focus, a lot of introspective time to kind of ask ourselves, how do we react throughout our day? Are we reacting or are we responding? And those are
Mm,
two very, very different things.
mhm.
When we're disciplined, we're responding. We're thoughtfully making decisions that are in alignment with the outcome that we desire. When
Right.
we're reacting, we're just going off on every whim, every impulse, every distraction, and we're completely off the track. So
Right.
this particular technique, I guess the point I want to get across here is, when you're feeling that impulse to not do what you're supposed to get done or do, take a step back and ask yourself, am I making this decision, or is my emotion making this decision? Is my fear making this decision?
Mm,
Okay.
mhm.
All right, moving on. And so a big part of inhibiting acting on an impulse is actually being really in tune with our body. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about some really helpful breathing techniques to kind of
quickly and effectively slow down our body, slow down our mind so that we actually can respond in the moment instead of reacting to those impulses. So the first one is called box breathing. This is a super great technique if you're sitting there and you just quickly need to regulate your emotions so you can make the right decision. And so if you visualize a box, a square box, so you're breathing in for 4 seconds, you're holding for 2 seconds, and then you're breathing out for 4 seconds. And you do that as many times as you need to until you start feeling like your body is regulating and you're getting back into the driver's seat of your life. It's a great form of stress reduction as well. The next one is belly breathing. This is also something to be mindful of when we are breathing. Typically, anxiety is held in the chest. So if we're feeling anxious, our breath is very shallow. So I'm going to challenge you to be mindful of actually breathing fully through your belly and letting your belly extend. That's going to kind of ground you, eliminate that anxiety, and kind of bring you back to a calm place. And then the last one is mindful breathing. This is great for going to bed, kind of letting your mind drift and letting yourself become really mindful and present in the moment. There's so much benefit to meditation. And so this is a great technique to practice as you drift off to sleep at night and really starting to strengthen your focus, strengthen your ability to just be really present in the moment. Right. The next one, Jonah, this kind of goes to your question earlier about suppressing emotions. So the third technique that takes time and takes practice to master, but it's decreasing the intensity of that emotion. And it's through observing it, just like clouds passing across the sky. You're not judging yourself, but you're getting really curious about what that emotion is. Why is it there? You're not labeling it as truth, but you're really just observing it as kind of a spectator. And if you practice this in the next hour when you're going through your day and you start to feel an emotion, I want you to just step back and observe that emotion almost like it's clouds passing through the sky, because that allows you to accept that emotion as it is and not push it down. When we push down our emotions, it's like children banging at the door. They're going to bang and bang and bang and get louder and louder and louder until we open the door and ask it what it wants. And then it'll go away, hopefully. Unless it wants a snack. So, and this is a great opportunity also to give yourself the opportunity to replace that thought and that emotion and decide again what you want the outcome to be. But we only can do that by taking a step back and really looking at that emotion from some distance. A really nice example of this, when I had my private practice and worked with a lot of kiddos that experienced a lot of trauma, they had a really hard time managing their intense emotional responses to just very casual things in life. And I had them hold up a piece of paper, and I'll do it here, but they held up a piece of paper in front of their face. And that symbolized their emotion. And it was really, really close to their eyes. So they couldn't see anything in their peripheral vision. That's all they could see. That's all they could feel. And then I asked them to extend their arms as far out as they could and then look at the emotion. And you can see this sense of relief that kind of came over them because they got this perspective that this emotion wasn't so big in their face, but if you just bring it out a little bit and create some space, you're able to kind of look at this and then allow it to just dissipate. It's a really powerful technique. And once you master it, I mean, you're really just like in this peace bubble, and it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So.
Oh, I love what you're saying too, though, about developing the ability to have perspective on where you're at. And so there's almost like two of you. There's the you who's feeling the emotions and the you that's like checking, is this valid? Is this not?
Yes.
That's so valuable. Yeah.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it's so easy to just feel like wherever you are in an emotion, or for someone to feel like wherever they are, like that's who
That's
you
truth.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's truth. That's reality. That's all it is. And that ties back to our thinking traps.
But it's so hard with people, is it? Because as that becomes habit, that starts to become identity.
Correct. 1000%.
Yikes.
Yeah. And that's why we lose our identity when, again, I'll bring it back
Yeah.
to gymnastics. It was my whole identity. I didn't know who I was without gymnastics. And so after I was done competing, I literally went through a depression of who am I? What am I good at? Because that was all I focused on. That's who I was.
Right.
And that's not allowing us to live this holistic, well-balanced, fulfilling life.
Right. Oofta. Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking is just how absolutely important this work is, in the sense of like any habit, you're going to get better at whatever you put your mind to. And if you're allowing your emotional state to consistently define your absorbed identity, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to adjust out of it.
Yeah. And it goes back, and tying it back into committing to discipline. Really, that word is just honoring our commitments.
Right.
It's really just about honoring our commitments. Your commitments are different than my commitments, but the way to get there is a very similar path.
Right.
So I love this conversation. Does anyone else have any thoughts or anything that they want
we're getting yeah. We had Sherry was saying you got to name it to tame it.
Yeah, you got to feel it to heal it.
And Haran was asking just now, what role does the linguistic part play on how we express ourselves? So I think a little more like what words we use.
Well, I took a training. It's called neuro-linguistic programming, and they talk a lot about language and how, and it's very true. I mean, we can program our mind based on the languages that we use, and it's a very specific technique. But it all kind of falls under this same umbrella, which is really interesting. But the language that we use absolutely influences the way we see things and how we see ourselves in the world around us.
Mm-hmm. I feel like these generations are getting such an education in that
Yep.
I have a sister who's
very colorful,
10 years younger too. So just seeing the exposure of the younger, like to grow up having Brene Brown and all of these people around is like,
oh my gosh,
it's wild.
It's I think that there's a movement going on for sure.
Yeah.
It's a big movement. Yeah.
Well, we're here today, right? That's part of it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. This has been so amazing. So I will I know with time's sake, I'm just going to wrap it up here.
Yes. I'll get out of the way for.
No, this is so wonderful. So just a real quick, I mean, I'm going to send you off. I hope this stuff has been valuable. I hope you've pulled a nugget or two out of this. Again, I'm so open for feedback, so you can absolutely, reach out to me, call me, email, whatever. But I wanted to kind of give you some homework to walk away with today. And really it comes down to just being aware, gaining awareness and control of our thoughts and emotions. So by doing this, I want you to get really curious this week. I want you to make a list of the actions that you need to take to fulfill the desired outcomes in that area that you chose earlier. I want you to time block those into your schedule as top priorities. Now, when I say top priorities, I mean top of mind. Those are the first things that I want you to tackle in your day, because that's going to build momentum. That's going to create those habits. Now, eventually you can adjust them, but I really want you to focus on keeping them top of mind, your top priority in your day. And then I want you to commit yourself to some of these techniques used. If you start feeling like you're getting off or convincing yourself of not following through, I want you to just tap into one of these techniques or all of them and really see how it impacts the outcome of your choices and your behaviors. So, all right. And that's all I have for you.
Melanie, thank you so much. I did want to talk a little bit, and folks, we have Melanie for a little longer, so please hop in the chat, ask some questions. Haran, I saw you asked one, and feel free to ask more. But while those questions are rolling in, I did want to talk a bit about your course. So we learned today just about one of the 7 pillars. but your course goes through the full 7 pillars. Can you talk a little bit just about what like the student experience is for the course, what the
Abs-
process is like?
Absolutely. I will say, full disclosure, this was the toughest pillar, I will have to say, because it's so in depth. And I was often caught in the weeds of all of this, the mental and emotional piece of it all, because it's so important. The rest of the 7 weeks, so it's 1 hour a week. Every week, we're going to touch on one of the pillars. So the second week is going to be addressing that ambivalence to change. So really looking at all parts of us and identifying and addressing any part of us that's kind of holding us back, whether it's fear of success or fear of, oh my gosh, what is my life going to look like if I actually commit myself to these actions? So really addressing that and kind of working through those pieces. The third week is going to be talking about procrastination and ways to manage procrastination. If anyone here is a procrastinator, this will be super helpful, and we'll do some exercises around that. The fourth week will be talking about our priorities, getting really, really clear and specific about what those top priorities, what is the 80-20, what are the top 20% of the things that are going to give us 80% of the results. What are those things? And we're going to put those into our schedule and commit, whether it's an accountability buddy or a coach, we're going to commit to following through on those things until they become a habit. The fifth week is going to be identifying with our goals, not just setting goals, but truly identifying with them so they become a part of who we are. So we're fully in alignment and fully committed to the actions that we're taking in pursuit to that life that we want. The sixth week is talking about habits. We're going to talk about establishing new habits, getting rid of old habits. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with grit. We're going to figure out how to put all of these things in action and attack it with passion and perseverance and commitment.
Yeah, love it. Love it. And for everyone watching, the links for that course, they're in the comments and they're in the description. And where can people find you just to learn more about what you do? Are you active on what
Absolutely.
platforms?
Social media, you can find me at Melanie Crane on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can email me at melanie.mauro, MAURO @kw.com.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And so we did have at least one good question to start off with, and we have a little time to get to questions. Haran, who's been so active, love that you're here,
Thank you.
was following up on kind of the linguistic aspect, but was asking, so for example, do you think that writing emotions on paper can be used to visualize them and help change them?
Oof.
I want to tag a little bit on this as well, because when we're in this phase, if we're just starting to really learn how to have perspective in our mental space or to step back from our mind, if we're not practicing that, it can be very difficult to handle it all in the mind.
Yes.
So to answer Haran's question, then also, can you expand a little on like some tools, or even if you just have a tool you suggest if you're having trouble making these habit changes early in your head?
Yep.
And I know you gave one exercise to start writing down, but do you have some other ones as well?
Sure. I love that question. Thank you so much for asking it. I am a huge proponent of visualization. Maybe that stemmed from my days as an athlete or not, but we learn differently. All of us have different learning styles. Visualizing cements the actions that we want to take. I am also a huge proponent of journaling. So yeah, creating those emotions, making them an object that you can see and feel and touch and put color to it so that you really create that separation between you and the rest of the world, the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings that aren't really who we are. It's just how we identify.
Right. Okay, then to tack on to what you just said at the end there, opening a little can of worms, how do you start making the difference between who you are and who you identify as?
Ooh.
If you just dropped that little nugget as if it was something we all should know.
I know. Gosh, I mean,
that's
I've been reading Brene Brown since I was like 7. So This has been a long time practice of awareness, getting really quiet, going back to meditation, allowing everything to melt away, and what is left is you. The only thing that is left when we quiet our mind is the real
self. All of the other things are our labels, our judgments, our core beliefs, the way we see the world. It's not actually who we are. It's how we come into the world and how we leave the world. That's who we are.
Right.
A mental thing, something that I found to be really helpful, and it might sound a little woo-woo, but it is, and it's amazing. At night, going to bed and literally visualizing everything just dies away. Everything, all of your thoughts, opinions, your job, everything just essentially dies. So when you wake up, you're literally a new person every single day. It allows you to let the baggage of the day behind you so you can start fresh through a new set of eyes, a new perspective, a new attitude. And it really allows you to kind of wake up and be your best self no matter what happened the day before.
So do you find, and I want to clarify, I'm not asking this in the realm of identity politics or anyone's right to identify in a certain way, but do you find in your own journey that how you identify has become less important as you focus on who you are?
Such a good question and so in depth. And yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I, going into real estate, I had a hard time with that new identity. And I would often say, I'm a therapist, but I sell real estate.
Right.
I'm a cognitive therapist, but I just sell real estate.
Yeah.
And I asked myself, why am I doing that? Because I was so passionate and proud of my education and my background and my job that I felt like I had to preface that I sell real estate, but I'm actually a therapist,
Yeah.
And I noticed I did that. And I really asked myself, why? What am I doing that for? It was the ego, but as we evolve, right, and we get to that holistic self and that life, the job, the title, the identity, that it means nothing.
Yeah. Oh man, I appreciate the way you put that too. I'm so used to coming from a music background where, for years right out of high school, people ask what I do. And it's like, oh, I'm a musician. Oh, do you make a living? Well, no, I work. We're so
Yeah.
good at
Like, why?
making Yeah. Why do we do this? Melanie, we have to wrap up for time.
Okay.
However, I want to thank you so much. For everyone watching, please hop in the comments and thank Melanie for her time and her grace and her expertise. I hope we have you back again because these are big topics we could talk a lot about. And I did just want to ask one more question before we fully wrap up. We've covered a lot in this last hour. And I can imagine that any of these little things little actions can take a while to put into place.
Yeah.
For everyone today or when they wake up tomorrow, can you prioritize, what do you think is the number one little tool that we can take out to start what I look at as a domino effect of actions as we work towards our self-discipline?
I'm going to simplify it really. I'm going to really simplify this. It all comes back to the fundamentals and the basics: sleep, diet, water, sunlight, exercise. We need to honor the basics of our life so that we can build the goals and the dreams and the aspirations. So get a good night's sleep. Right. Don't consume social media right before bed. Turn your phone off. Meditate tonight.
Right.
Write some affirmations tonight so that when you wake up tomorrow morning, your subconscious mind is ready to attack the day, and get really, really clear about how you want tomorrow at this time to feel right now.
I love that.
And honor that and see what happens.
So it's pointless to change the tire on the car if the engine isn't working, right? That's kind of...
Yes. Don't slash all three tires just because one tire's flat.
Right. I love it. Melanie, it's been such a delightful hour. I got a lot to think about. I think everyone who's watching too has taken a lot away. So it's been such a blast. And for everyone watching, if you're watching the replay or if you're watching live, hop in the comments, show your appreciation. Let us know what you learned. And if you learned something, had a good time today, are leaving with a lot of thoughts, please like and subscribe to the Spotlight channel. We're consistently trying to bring folks like Melanie out here to help us grow in business, language learning, art, and all these things, or the big hard stuff like we're talking about today, which really lies the foundation for everything. So I love when we have events like this, which just set the concrete for everything else we want to build. But once again, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I hope we see you again soon, Melanie.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.